Hi everyone, my name is Dave, and welcome to Extra Credit, a video series where we take an unscripted look at topics related to local history and exploring that history. All right, so before we get started with today's episode, just a quick reminder to first of all visit my website. You'll find a link in the description. There's all kinds of information on my website related to topics that we take a look at in this video series. Also, you can follow me on social media, so you'll find me on Facebook, you'll find me on Instagram, and you'll also find me on Twitter. And finally, if you haven't already done so, please make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. There's a lot of content that drops regularly on this channel, particularly in the spring, the summer, and the fall when I'm out hiking. And by turning on the notifications, you'll get that content a lot sooner than if you have to wait for it to come out on social media. So let's get started with today's episode. So first of all, you'll notice a little bit different location for today's episode. So I'm actually at home. I'm on my back deck. And the reason why we're here, we normally do the episodes at a camp, but it's been a little bit busy around the Christmas season here, the holiday season, and I was just out at camp yesterday, and there was a lot of snow, and I spent my time kind of cleaning the snow, so I didn't really have time to film the episode out there. So a little bit of a different location, which is okay. And the reason why we're outside filming this, we normally do kind of the introduction to this inside, is because it kind of relates to today's topic. So today is a follow-up episode that we did last winter when we were talking about these handy dandy little devices. We were talking about GPS. Now, many of you have used GPS. Basically, if you have a phone, there's a GPS on the phone. But in last year's episode, what we did was we basically explored the technology, how it's kind of evolved, how I use GPS on my hikes. And so basically taking a look at the handheld GPS that I use here, which is a Garmin model. And then we basically did a little field episode where we went out by Pass Lake on the Kinghorn rail grade, and it basically showed you a little bit about how the GPS works and how I use it. So this episode is basically talking a little bit about how I would use the GPS prior to my hikes. And so the GPS isn't just a tool where you can basically go out and use it to navigate and use it to record and locate locations that are out when you're doing your hikes, whether they be historical like that I do, or just if you're doing it recreationally. Essentially, the GPS and the software that comes with it, if you're using the software, will basically allow you to kind of exchange information between a computer and the device. And so what we're going to do is essentially I'm going to show you on my computer how I would try to locate certain things. So say, for example, if I was trying to locate something that I could see on a map, and then I'm trying to translate that into, trying to locate it on the ground, how I would go about doing that. So the example that I'm going to use for you is this past spring, I did some hiking in near Jellicoe, which is about 3 hours north of here. And so what I wanted to locate at Jellicoe was there was a turning Y, and basically a turning Y looks like an inverted Y, so an upside down Y on the railway tracks, and basically allows trains to reverse direction without using things like a turntable. So you'll find them on, from location to location. And so this one had been used for quite a long period of time, and then probably was discontinued, I would say, in the 1960s. So it hasn't been used for probably about 60 years. And I kind of have an inkling where it was, but I wanted to be able to trace all the parts of it. And so what I did, and you're going to see me do this on the computer, is I essentially took an old map and I was able to basically overlay that onto Google Earth. And once I was able to do that, and there's a bit of work to doing that, and you're going to see that on the computer, then I was able to basically find the spots, and using Google Earth, I was able to get latitude and longitude coordinates, and then I was able to transfer that to my GPS software and then upload the software to the GPS. And so when it came time to actually doing the hike, all the data was in there. And as you're going to see, I was able to sort of locate things within, in some cases, meters of their actual location. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut to the computer parts of the episode. All right, so here we go with the computer part of this. What I'm going to have to do is I'm actually going to have to kind of splice clips together because, as it turns out, I used two different computers for this. I have done the overlay on my MacBook, and then I did the GPS part on my PC. The GPS software that I use is PC only, so I can't load it onto my MacBook, and so I kind of have to use two different computers. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about overlaying the map. So the map that I used for the overlay is this map right here. So you can see I don't have it open here in Adobe. So what it was it was a map of the Neza Lake area. So Neza is just to the west of Jellicoe. This map was produced by, at the time, the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources, which is today the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry and Mines, I think it's called. Anyway, so this map was produced in 1982, and so what I've done is basically, if I zoom in here, I've taken basically a section of this map around Jellicoe, so this little area here. And what I've done is basically I've overlaid this on top of Google Earth. So I do have Google Earth open here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you basically how the overlays kind of work. So I'm just going to kind of scroll. Maybe I can better zoom out here. I'm going to scroll over here to where Jack Pine Station is, and I'm going to do an overlay over here again just to show you how it kind of works. So there's the Jack Pine area. So essentially, when you want to overlay an image, you go add image overlay, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select an image from my desktop. And so here's the image here. And then what you can do is you can control the opaqueness of the image. And then what you basically have to do is you have to take the image and then you have to kind of move it around and try to line up all of the features that you see on the map with basically what's happening on the Google Earth image. It's kind of a very sort of tricky process. It's not particularly easy to do because you have a lot of manipulating of the issue of the a lot of manipulation of the image to try to get everything to line up properly. And then once you have it sort of in there, what you can do is, again, you can sort of control the opaqueness of the image. So that's basically how you overlay an image. And again, it really depends on the accuracy of the map that you're using. All right, so let's scroll back over here to the Jellicoe area. And so what I've done is you can see that I have the image overlay that I've used. And if we want, what we can do is we can, sorry. Now it's wanting to do all this funky stuff here. Let me fix the map here. All right, so there's our image overlay. And so what I can do here is I can play with the opaqueness. And again, it took me a bit to try to match it up. You can see just by me kind of playing with the opaqueness here, you can see I tried to line it up the best that I could, basically using a lot of the sort of terrain features. It's not 100% perfect. Again, it's very difficult to sort of get it exactly, sort of how you want it. But essentially, I was able to match it up fairly well. So again, our interest was for this was to sort of locate where this Y was. And so again, if I pull up the map and I play with the opaqueness, you can kind of see, right? Like, so I can see something here. I can definitely see this western leg of the Y, right? So you can kind of see, you know, features on the ground as they start to sort of line up. All right. So then basically what I did, once I had it lined up, and again, I could see some of the terrain features underneath, what I would start to do is I would start to sort of peg these things, okay, or plot them. So essentially I would take this tool right here, which is basically a place mark tool. And then I would start sort of marking things, right? So for example, I would mark this location right here, right where this western leg meets the grade. And you can see here that you can see the coordinates that I've pegged in there. And so what I would do is basically I would write this down, or most likely I just even take like I put a description in there, right? So I would type in you know, something like western leg, right, and grade, and then I would even just take a picture with my phone. And then what I can do is go over to my computer, or I could just even have them side by side, right? Open up my computer and then start plotting that, right? So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you how I would have plotted that on my PC. All right, so what we're going to do here, so you can see my GPS software. You can see that there's a lot of mess on the screen. Jellicoe is a very busy area, so there's a lot of waypoints that are recorded. There's a lot of presumed data points that are recorded. So what we're going to do first of all is we're just going to basically show you that spot that we identified on Google Earth with the map overlay, and basically where the western leg of the turning Y intersects with the grade. You can see I've already got a point here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to add another point here. We're just going to add the data from the GPS. So we're going to call this, we're just going to call it Western Y junction. I'm going to leave that symbol on there. So what I'm going to do is we're going to change the data points on here. So this is the data that we got from Google Earth. So the northing or the line of latitude is north 49, 41.388, and then the longitude is west 87, 31, 594. So we're going to see where that point comes on. So you can basically see here that it's pretty much right in the same vicinity where we identified the other point, right? So they're almost basically right on top of each other right here. So right in that similar vicinity. All right. So then essentially what I did was now I would go through and essentially plot all of these different points. So I plotted where the western leg meets the grade, and then I plotted all the intersections, right? So essentially where the western leg met the middle leg, and then where the eastern leg and the western leg met, and the tip of the Y. And then again down here where the eastern leg met the middle leg, and then again where it kind of meets the grade here, right? So I had all of these locations plotted. And then again, I would take all of this data that you can see up over here, and then I would transfer it onto my PC. What I didn't do, what I should have, is you'll notice that there's all kinds of buildings down here, and I didn't sort of plot any of these structures. It would be kind of neat to see if some of those were actually still there. I don't think this one here. This is this area that you can kind of see here is where the Trans-Canada pipeline passes through. So obviously the pipeline any structures on the pipeline would be gone. But again, these ones here, and maybe some of these here in the tree line, might have still been there. Okay, so what we're going to do now, basically how you saw the process that I took, we're going to transfer everything over onto the PC, and what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the spots that I plotted, and then compare them with the data that I actually got on the ground. All right, so what we're going to do right now is we are going to take a look at this area around the turning Y, which again was a point of emphasis for me when I did my exploration around Jellicoe. And what I did was I specifically held off adding the data that I gathered, the GPS data that I gathered at Jellicoe back in May. It's now December, and I held off adding that data so I could basically demonstrate this for this particular video. So what I did was I basically went through and all of the previous data points that I had entered for this turning Y, I all changed them all to these red flag symbols. And the reason why I did that was just make it easier to differentiate when I added the actual GPS data that I gathered. So if you remember, we had previously taken a look at this spot right here. So I had previously marked the spot where the western leg of the Y intersected with the grade, and that was the information we gleaned from the overlay in Google Maps, and this was the data point that we just added a few moments ago on there. So essentially what I have here is these are all data points that I entered either from essentially getting the coordinates off Google Earth and then basically transposing them on there, or some of the points were actually taken from when I did a previous exploration of Jellicoe back in June of 2021. I had gone in and basically taken a look at a few things. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go in here and just temporarily remove this track, because the track actually screws us up a little bit, because what you can actually see is the track here actually records my data points as I went through the Y. So you can actually see my route here. So everything's all nicely pinned out. So I'm going to just temporarily remove that data set with that. So we're just left with the raw data that was either from that June 2021 exploration, where I did get some physical spots on the ground, or the ones that I transposed from the Google Earth overlay. Again, these are all the red flags. There's a few buildings that we got off of there that I did put on as well. So what I'm going to do right now is I am going to open up that file. So we're not going to save that. So this is all the data that I got from my exploration back in May. And so you can see all of the data points that are on here. You'll notice that I just started numbering them. Right, so essentially you can see here starting at 10, 11, 12. The ones with the J are the junction points. So you'll notice that there's a junction point here, then there's a junction point here, then there's a junction point here, right? So these are the junction points between the three legs of the Y, and then the one up here with the E basically indicates that this is the end or the top part of the Y. So what I'm going to do is essentially I'm going to grab all of this. I'm going to Control A. I'm going to copy it all, and then we're going to go back to this data set, and then I'm going to zoom out here. And we're going to do a Control V, and we're going to paste all of that data in. Now I'm going to go back here and just temporarily remove track. So now let's zoom in. And what we're going to be able to see is we're going to be able to see how that transposed data corresponds with the actual data on the ground. So for example here, you'll notice that I've marked, so there's a section here, so you'll notice on the GPS software it shows you that there's a spot where the the natural gas pipeline crosses. And so there's a big open spot here, and it's very difficult to see the grade in here. But you'll notice the two data points here, and you'll notice how they sort of correspond with these two data points. So these two data points were actually taken right where it is on the ground. And again, you can see how they line up. So that's pretty darn close. Again, remember that there's a bit of a margin of error. So typically on a good day on the GPS, you're getting 3 or 4 meters of accuracy on the GPS. Like this is not, you know, I'm just using a handheld GPS, right? So I'm not using something that is super accurate, right? You know, I'm not using, you know, a GPS that can get down to below a meter accuracy. So you're going to get some, you know, you're going to get some error in there, right? So if you're running at 3 meters of accuracy, you know, you're looking at, you know, around about 10. You're looking at about a 10-foot radius, right? So if I actually measure this point to this point here, right, that's only 19 meters, right? So from this, so I'm looking at, it's about 9 meters or less, right? Even less, maybe about 5 meters. So it's within the scope of error within the GPS. So these points almost perfectly line up. So then if we work our way this way, so you'll notice here I've got a couple of marks right here, and then you'll notice that the actual mark here, right? So essentially, again, if I take this and I come down here, so it's showing me about 9 meters or so, right? So 9, 10 meters. So again, I'm within about 30 feet of where that is marked, what it was marked on my GPS and what I actually marked on the ground. And again, as you start moving into this area, you start getting to heavier cover. And so what happens is the accuracy of the GPS starts to drop. So for sure, you're running 4 meters. Sometimes you're in the 5, 6 meter range, right? So now when you start doing that math, right, you're now up into the 18, 20, 21, 22 foot range accuracy. So again, that's all within the margin of error of the GPS. So let's take a look at this here. So this waypoint here, so I've got the junction marked here, and this is where the junction actually is. And so if we take our measuring tool and we measure it, I've basically got that junction point pinned within about 17 meters, which really isn't terrible, right? It's within, you know, it's 17 times 3.28. I'm not going to do that off the top of my head right now, but you know, just a crude estimate, you're looking at, you know, roughly in about a 40 to 50 foot radius, right? So that's fairly decent. Again, so here you can see this part here is showing the middle leg of the Y, right? And so you can see the data points here. So here I've got this number 28, and then here you've got 1. That's pretty close, 27, and this one here, 26. This is all pretty close. And then this one here, when it says Y24J, that's the junction point. Well, look at my junction point over here, right? That's pretty darn close in terms of the actual distance, right? I mean, that's 9 meters. Again, in the heavy cover, you know, I mean, essentially you're looking at roughly about, you know, 30 feet, which again is pretty good. If we wind our way up here, and so we come up the western leg, you'll notice that my data point here is kind of in between these two data points, which again is pretty darn good. You know, if you're talking about that, right, you know, so you're coming up from 13, you're going to 14. We're pretty close to this data point here. If we come up all the way up to the top here, here's the junction at 15, and then here's the junction that I had marked on the software. Basically, you can see that we're within 13 meters, and so again, you mean you're looking at something that is very, very close. Let's scroll up to the top here. Again, this is where I had pegged the end of the Y, these two right here. And again, if we're taking a look at this, you know, you're essentially looking at 8 meters of distance. So again, not a great deal of distance, right? You're looking at less than 30 feet. Coming back down on this side of the Y, I think here is where we get a little bit off, right? So you can see this, I've got a bunch of data points here, kind of coming down here, and this is where we're kind of off a little bit, right? This one doesn't look too bad, right? So this is coming down this east side of the Y, right? And it comes down this way here. So this one's not too bad. This one's kind of way out to lunch somewhere here. So these ones are all pretty close, okay? Pretty much, very much online with what's happening with the Y, all right? Coming down to here. And again, remember, these data points are not precise either, right? This one could very much be over here somewhere, right? So here you got basically the junction point, and then again things start to curve from the data point, right? You've got the junction point here, 24. We've already talked about this, and then essentially we have 22. And then 23, and then this is where it comes out onto the grade, and you can see I've got that pegged over here. So all in all, it's not terrible. What we're going to do here is we're going to jump back to this, and then we'll go back to this one here, and then now we will have all of this data. We will repaste my points. So now you can see how everything lines up with the actual track of the GPS. So you can see it a little bit better, right? So we'll go all the way back here to the west. So you can see how these two data points line up as I was coming through this portion here. So this portion is still intact. This is where things kind of get a little sketchy down here. I remember seeing a few ties in here. I'm surprised I didn't mark any of that on the actual software. Maybe I'll have to go back and do that. Here's where the pipeline crosses, and this is kind of all sort of opened up, and then you kind of reacquire the point here. So basically coming through, there's the junction point, right? So there you can kind of see where I'm splitting across going this way. So if we work our way up this way, up the Y, zoom out a little bit here, you can see there's point 14 on there, and there's 15, there's the junction. Right, and again, that's going to be a little bit off. You can see how these don't necessarily mesh particularly well. There's a bit of a gap in there. Again, that's going to be the error with the GPS. And so essentially here you're going to see this as it curves up. We're kind of close to these data points here. Here's the end. I had one of these ends kind of marked way up here, but obviously that was off. Then coming down this side here, you can see how these ones are kind of close, particularly this one. And then coming down here, right, this one isn't too bad as well, right? And then coming back down this way, you can see how some of these points are right on here, right? And then working its way all the way across, and then it would come out down here. So the whole purpose of kind of showing this to you was, obviously this was a very extensive one because I was really trying to locate this, but this is oftentimes a process that I will do. You know, when I'm going out on these hikes and I'm trying to identify features, I will look at things like Google Earth, and I will pin stuff ahead of time. I will also I do have a CN profile map, and I will try to identify things on there, translate them into what I see on Google Earth, and then basically transpose that. And you can kind of see that on this side of the yard as well. I've added some, again, you can see it's just sort of a mess of stuff in here, but basically it's kind of the same process that I would go through. I remember on this side of the yard identifying, you know, where I saw the turntable and things like that, and then actually going through and locating them. I have to actually go through and clean up this side of the yard. You can see that there's a lot of data points in here that
may or may not be accurate, and things like that that I'll have to go through and take care of. But anyway, that was the process that I used here at Jellicoe. It worked out really, really well for me. Again, it's really going to depend on the accuracy of the map that you're using, and so thankfully the one that I was using, I was able to kind of get on the overlay very well, and it was able to line up pretty accurately for me, and I was able to use that with the GPS to be able to very correctly identify where this Y was located. But again, it's a process that I've used for a very long period of time with many of my other hikes, and I will continue to use in the future as well.
All right, so hopefully you enjoyed all of that explanation. It's a little bit different than our normal episodes because you're not kind of really seeing me, or we're not really outdoors. You're basically seeing what's on my screen, and there's kind of a lot that's going on there. I do apologize. When I was using my PC computer, the mouse clicks, when I kind of cropped the video a little bit, the mouse clicks didn't always line up. With what I was pointing to on the screen, kind of one of the limitations sometimes of the technology when you're trying to record the screen. But anyway, hopefully you found that informative. It's again something that you can do. Not everybody is going to do this type of thing. It's going to be limited to maybe people like myself who are doing these types of historical explorations and basically needing to sort of transfer that information back and forth between what I'm seeing on the ground and devices. And it's not just limited to maps. You can also do that with historic aerial photographs. And again, there's a bit of a challenge to it because when you're trying to overlay, whether it be a map or whether it be an aerial photograph onto things like Google Earth, it doesn't always necessarily line up easily. Sometimes there's going to be inaccuracies with the map, aerial photographs, depending on the angle at which it's taken, trying to get everything to mesh with that. That's probably the biggest challenge is trying to get everything overlaid on the Google Earth map, and then getting your data from there. So in any case, we'll probably come back with another episode on GPS in the future. Again, just sort of utilizing the technology in an exploration context, in a historical context. And in any case, we'll be back next month with yet another episode. And so I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and stay safe, everyone.